The reality is because we're working from the inside out. And more often than not, the things that are getting in a leader's way, getting in there and challenging them to really reach that next level are more often than not internal doubts, concerns, insecurities, and there's no safe place inside an organization to discuss those, right? So one of the things we really find is that the thing that we can add to that leader's experience is getting at those deeper issues faster than they do it by themselves. We often refer to the internal tickle, or I refer to the internal tickle. It's the thing that is kind of uncomfortable, but exciting at the same time. And when you're in that mode, it's like, how do you really push through and really figure out what that next step is? We all know that gut reaction, right? Or that kind of uncomfortableness. Whenever we're in a situation like that, that is a moment and an opportunity to really excel and push through and achieve at a greater level. And that's what we really try to do, is help our clients move through that in a much faster, much more efficient way than if they're trying to do it themselves. And that's the biggest problem, is getting people to agree that they need to have someone help them. Help them move through it, help them get there. Yes, they're all smart. Yes, they're all talented. Yes, they're all successful. But how do we help them acknowledge that there's a barrier, there's a gap, and they need to move on it? And that's where, as a safe, confidential resource, coaches are able to do something that most internal resources aren't able to do. And that's kind of really the sweet spot where we step in. So great question, by the way. Thank you so much. So one of the things we talked about with the benefits of coaching: improved productivity, improved engagement, improved employee well-being, higher revenues, increased retention. Any of you want that? Just curious. I know that in my 28 years in human resources, it dominated my everyday. How do I get and achieve these things? And so when I decided to step out of HR, I'm hoping I do this right. Is it the middle button or the top button? Right hand, good. When I stepped out of HR and decided to become a full-time coach, what I was looking for is, how do we start to create coaching cultures inside organizations? And this is really where the key element lies. And I'm going to stand over here if that's okay. We got a photographer here, and I'm more comfortable on this side. Sorry. Hello. Smile for the camera. I've got a few friends here, and they know that if there's a microphone to be had, it's mine. So the thing that's really cool about creating that coaching culture is that we're really starting to get at, how do we take coaching into all levels of the organization? How does it become part of your culture? And I'm going to borrow from a lot of organizations who are on that lean journey, right? How many are doing a lean journey in your organizations? Right. It's a journey. It's not a destination. Same thing with the coaching culture. It is a journey. And a big part of that is really all about, how do we gain greater insights into our organization? How do we grow skills, achieve goals, and maximize personal and professional development? So some of the key steps in this process are really, it's a 5-step process. This is a roadmap if you want to be thinking about it in that way. Buy-in. You can't achieve this kind of a cultural shift in your organization unless you have buy-in from the senior level all the way through the organization. Because truthfully, the ones who are impacted the most by it are leaders who have learned to coach by telling. I'm going to coach you on how I want you to do this differently, right? That's not quite coaching. So buy-in. Buy-in is really key. If you don't have buy-in for this, you don't even bother with the other items. Aligning and assigning resources. Very similar to anything that you want. You got to spend some money, time, energy, resources on it. Development of leaders. This is a huge shift for them. They have to learn to ask questions. They have to learn how to put aside that need to just solve the problem. We have so many managers who are so great at just solving the problem. And what we have to do is help them learn skill sets that have them step back. The other thing that Nicole mentioned was different modalities of coaching and really making sure that we're providing access to a large part of the population, that it's not just this elite few. And then also looking at how are you going to really make sure that you've got a number of different ways that you're providing those coaching resources. Let's take these one at a time in a little more detail. And again, I think of this as kind of that culture roadmap. They have to believe, leaders in these strong coaching cultures have to believe. They have to be believers. I believe, right? We want them all shouting it out loud. We want them to know that this is about a way of working, a way of thinking. It's a way of building your internal community in your organizations. And they have to believe that everyone in the organization has capacity for growth. They also have to believe that employees are creative, resourceful, and they're whole. They're not broken. When we come into coaching, we come into it with this is a whole person. They're not broken. They don't need to be fixed. We're going to take them from where they are and help them be better, but they're not broken. Coaching is a core component of each leader's role. This is, again, I'm going to reinforce this. This is the key crutch. You've got to make sure your leaders are buying in. And we've got to make sure that we're developing people, believe that developing the people has a direct impact on the bottom line, and it does. HR plays a huge, huge role in this process, because one of the things we also know is that we really own the people processes. We own that suite of tools that have to do with employee performance, total rewards, talent development, selection, training. And this is an area where we've got to make sure that we're aligning these resources. Now, it would be great if every one of these quadrants was aligned, but my recommendation is you pick your focus. So for instance, if what's topmost of mind for you is engagement, how do you start to link the coaching to support those engagement initiatives? So maybe there's some things that you're really focusing on innovation. How can you, through coaching, create more innovation in your employees? Pull that out of them. Help them tease out those ideas and suggestions and opportunities for continued growth. Well-being, work-life balance. You know, well-being is one of these things that we're really starting to see has a major impact for people in the millennials. How do we make sure that we're helping them understand how to balance all those aspects? Productivity. I came out of manufacturing. Productivity was word one. And so how do we help grow that productivity? And it doesn't matter if you're in health and human services or you're in manufacturing or you're in government. All of us are being held as employees to be productive. How do we improve that? How do we pull that faster and further in the organization? Selection. Another great opportunity. As you're bringing people into your organization, how are you using coaching to really help them establish their credibility and their effectiveness very quickly as people are moving into new roles, getting promoted? What are we doing to support them so that they're able to hit the ground running, build their capabilities at a very quick, fast level, and get them to the highest levels of productivity? It's all about business, my friends. Develop leaders really requires that we maximize our investment. So how many of you are familiar with the adult learning model? Yeah. Been around for a while. Center for Creative Leadership is really attributed with, you know, owning this and creating this. Where we fit in from a coaching standpoint is really this 20% where we're supporting what's happening out there. Manufacturing, we refer to plan, do, check, adjust a lot, right? So you do something, and then we've got somebody back in here going, let's debrief it. Let's talk about it. What worked? What didn't work? How would you do that differently? Go back out. And it's this constant process of kind of double checking, doing that circular process. This is where the retention happens. Training and development is great as the baseline, but to get that skill set, that behavior change, it does require that we make sure we're focusing on those other two items. Coaching and mentoring, as well as the on-the-job, that experience-based work. Access. This is really, really key. And this is some great ways that you can start to bring coaching into your organization. The leadership teams. Now, typically, I think most organizations that have done coaching have dabbled at this level, right? It's more like a benefit. You have to be at the high level. It's kind of like, our executives get coaches, and they need coaches because they're really not in safe roles. They have nobody to talk to. They need coaches. The next group, though, is really group coaching. We're seeing a lot of group coaching springing up in organizations. It's a great, effective way for organizations to get a lot of people focused on an initiative, using a coach to support that conversation. In many cases, you might have somebody who's also facilitating, maybe as a facilitator, but the coach is really looking at how do they come up with the solutions. I've seen this done a lot with cohort groups, specific groups within an organization. I've also seen this when we talk about teams, either work teams or project teams. So if you've got an organization and you've got a cross-functional team of people who are really building out a new product or a new service, having a coach kind of working with them helps ensure that they hit those timelines when they're required to, and you get a much more effective product because the coach is really helping them work through a lot of the stuff that's underlying. High potentials, we've seen a lot where part of your succession management, where you are working with bringing people into your pipeline. So that high potential, or often considered high value, people who may not be ready for that next level or even considered for that next level, but you want to make sure you're retaining in your organization. So that's what I refer to as the high value employees. Diversity and inclusion. We don't have a lot of diversity in Wisconsin. We have a few men in the room, which is nice, so that's good. I'm glad we're finally getting some representation with you guys, so that's good. Welcome. But it's really about how do we create more opportunities for diverse candidates, people of color, that need to have more opportunities for sharing and safe places to vent and to talk through issues that they're running into. And then also, we historically used to see this a lot more, the at-risk, the people who were performance problems. It was kind of the last resort, but very rarely is coaching used for that anymore. This is an investment you're making in an employee, and so typically people are really focusing on other ways to approach the at-risk, but really focusing their coaching dollars on people who they really want to retain in their organization. There are really three, when you think about the modalities and the sources for coaching, the one that most organizations immediately think of is that external coach practitioner. I am an example of an external coach practitioner. Somebody hires me to come in and work with a group of people that they have or individuals in their organization. And I'm contracted on a person-by-person basis kind of thing. Then we have what we're really selling and telling you about today and talking about is really building a coaching culture at this level. Leaders, managers, really getting them to have that skill set ingrained in their everyday. And then the third piece, which we do see quite a few individuals now being hired by organizations as internal coaches. And it's a lovely thing to see. For instance, how many of you know of the company Myron Construction? Okay, good. You know what they have? They have a dream coach. A dream coach, that's his title. He's an internal coach, and his whole purpose, Myron Construction. How macho is that, right? And they have a dream coach. And his job is to help every employee in that organization who has a dream, regardless if it's work-related or not, achieve that dream. How sweet is that, right? I want to grow up to be a dream coach. Man, what a job. So this is the formula. Believers, alignment, skilled leaders, access, and the coaching modalities. This is the formula. You could sell this one to your finance people, I promise. Improve productivity and engagement. How can they turn down improved productivity engagement? Any questions on that piece? I know I'm talking pretty fast. keeping up, Tom? All right, fabulous. I want to talk a little bit about selecting the right coach. This is something that is also really important. No different than when you are hiring somebody for your organization. You're hiring a consultant, you're hiring a full-time employee, you're sourcing a vendor, you're sourcing raw materials. You want to create a partnership. You want to make sure that you are getting somebody who is going to be a fit for your organization. So here are some tips that we would like to offer you for you to consider as you're thinking about how does a coaching culture fit for your organization and where does that kind of play in. So the first thing is educate yourself about coaching, which you're doing today. You've all come to this presentation. We hope you walk away with some really key points. But there are a lot of great resources out there that you don't have to spend a dime for. There are a ton of great resources, and the one that is probably the deepest in terms of just coaching information is the ICF website. It's coachfederation.org. They have a ton of white papers. They have a ton of information out there about, the ROI on coaching and the process of coaching and what coaching is, what it isn't. The competencies that Nicole went through, the amount of information out there on what each of those competencies entails is pretty tremendous. So I encourage you, if you get a chance and you want to learn more, this really should be your first place to stop and look for more information. The next piece is really establishing what are we trying to achieve. Going back to that alignment, what are you trying to achieve? Which part of your business are you trying to raise the watermark on? Is it retention? Is it productivity? Is it succession candidates? What is that watermark that you're trying to raise? And focusing on that, really want to look at what are you trying to achieve. We recommend that you always interview multiple candidates, just like you would if you were hiring someone for your organization. Coaching, and when I'm being asked to go in front of somebody to be considered as their coach, they have a couple of coaches to look at. So it's really important that it's the right fit for the individual, that my style, Nicole's style, all of our styles, are a fit with that individual. And that's something that's really important. So you want to interview multiple candidates. And again, it comes down to just really select the one that's the right fit. There's a couple of different places for those of you who have international or global organizations or even national organizations. There's a Coach Finder tool out on the ICF website, something for you to start with to narrow your search. You can put out an RFP. It's a very simple process. It'll generate candidates that fit kind of it's like an applicant pool for coaching. And then we're also in the process of building out a Coach Finder tool on our Wisconsin website. We have about 150 members across the state who are part of the ICF Wisconsin chapter, and you can look for information on that as well. Here are some questions to ask. Again, no reason to reinvent the wheel, so if you do decide to move down this path, pull these questions out. This is a great way for you to start the process. You want to understand what their credentials are. You want to understand what their training has been. You do want to understand if it's someone who's coming at it with more of a mentoring approach or more of a consulting approach, because we do have a lot of people who really combine all of that. And they call it coaching, consulting. We tend to take a fairly pure view of coaching from the ICF standpoint, but there's a lot of people out there, and it's really important to understand what are you really looking for. Do you want a consultant? If that's the case, then you want to make sure you're really looking at that criteria. Measuring the impact of coaching. I'm finding that in most organizations, this is a topic that usually is an upfront conversation, but I'll be real candid. Most organizations then don't go back and track it. I think we should. I'm of the mindset that this is something that HR is bringing to the party, and HR is required more and more these days to demonstrate the value that we bring to an organization. And I think that this is an area where we can establish some metrics, we can establish some water lines, and look at how we're growing and what we're doing. So I would recommend that you think about how do you measure the impact of coaching, especially if you're looking at creating a coaching culture. We typically think of coaching in two ways. Return on investment, we also think of it as return on expectation. So our finance guys always like to talk about return on investment, but I think we can bring in that conversation around expectations as well. So potential areas of focus that we can look at. More often than not, we look at the person being coached. What's their level of satisfaction with the coaching engagement and how it went for them? What were the behavior changes? What are the things that are different as a result of this coaching engagement? How have they changed? What elements of their world have they transformed? How are they, showing up differently in the organization? And being able to articulate what those items are. Sometimes they can be quantitative, but a lot of times those are more qualitative, and you can get 360s, you can get a number of assessment tools that would kind of measure the before and after, if you will. Coachee performance, and the results achieved. Now, this is more of a metric. This is where you're looking at, okay, a lot of times if you're doing a sales coaching, it's like, what were the increase in sales as a result of this? Or if you've got somebody who's on a new product development team and you're doing team coaching, how, did they hit on budget, on time? Are they achieving kind of the goals and objectives? ERP teams, people implementing ERPs. This is a great way to also look at, did I come in under budget on this? Did I achieve what we said we were going to do? 360-degree feedback, I mentioned that a little bit. So this is an opportunity to kind of get that adjustment. Yes? That's a good question. Okay, ERP is typically, when you think about a technology platform, where it's an enterprise technology system like SAP, Oracle. Those are some names of different groups. JD Edwards, those are ERP platforms. It's usually shown up in a technology environment. Sometimes you can also be thinking about an HRIS implementation, and maybe you've got a cross-functional team that's working on an HRIS implementation. Tom did that for me. So does that answer your question? Okay. And then really improvement on targeted engagement scores. So a lot of you use engagement surveys, right? How many of you are using engagement surveys? Okay, these are great. So if you're building a coaching culture, you have that baseline. Here's what my coaching engagement scores were prior to starting coaching culture, and here's how they're progressing over a period of time. Again, it's a journey, not a destination. So this is one of these things that you can tie back to your engagement scores. Measuring impact and value. There's a really great blog that we had there's a ICF global member who wrote a really nice blog. It's out on the ICF website that talks about ROI and how to start measuring it and what that looks like. So if you get to that spot, don't reinvent the wheel. Go find this out there. Pull up this information. I'm a big believer in not inventing the wheel. So you want to do that. For me personally, one of the things I do with my clients is I challenge them to identify a 7 to 10 times return on what they're paying me. And in doing that, what I do is I set up for them right at the beginning of our conversation the focus on the fact that they're making an investment in themselves, or their company is making an investment in themselves, and how are they going to return that value? What is that value coming back in terms of either their lifestyle and their own personal situation, for my personal clients and for my corporate clients? How are they bringing that value back to the organization? So one of the things I like to do very early on is really challenge my clients to identify what's the value and how can they identify a 7 to 10 times value on what they're paying me. It helps them think about their skin and how they can feel great about what they've accomplished. So we've gone through this fairly fast. Coaching is something that we are passionate about. I'm a bit of an evangelist when it comes to coaching and the power and impact that coaching can have in someone's life. I've personally done coaching on a couple of different occasions, and it's transformed my world, and it's allowed me to, what I like to say is, be the best version of myself. And when you bring coaching into your organization and you can let everybody become the best version of themselves, think about that power, that swell of engagement and energy and focus that you can start to bring to your organizations. We encourage all of you, if you're thinking about a coaching culture, reach out to us. we are happy to help you. We're not selling anything. We just want you to be successful. We want your organizations to be successful. And as an ex-HR person, I'm always going to be HR person first and foremost. So I'm passionate about what you do. You're my people. So if anything I can do to personally help you, don't even hesitate. If you have any other questions, now's the time to ask. Yes. It's data. Pull the data, pull the business case, create the business case around it. For most of your leaders, it's going to be, what is the value to me as a business? And look at those benefits that Nicole mentioned earlier: productivity increase, revenue increase, engagement increase. All of those things really start to become the baseline for why you're doing this. Yeah, it can't be, you can't go to them and say it's the right thing to do. No, CFOs don't really go with that for much, you know. No, yeah. Ton. Yes. Actually, I will reference this. There's a great article, or the great study that PwC just completed. It's out on the ICF website. There is a $15 charge for that report, but it's full of great data, great information, and it really demonstrates how companies are using coaching and what the value of that coaching is really being seen as. It's just new, just came out about 30 days ago maybe, and you probably find it right on the front page of the ICF. It's coachfederation.org. I think it's right on the front page right now because it's brand new. Yeah, it's a great, great, great study. So really did a nice job with it. Yes?
Coming into this, I was thinking more about the problem managers and how we force them into coaching. I wasn't really thinking about it from the being proactive and taking the level to the organization to the next level. Successes dealing with people where you're at the point where they need to change, make a difference, or we have to get them off the bus. And is this an effective way?
If someone needs to get off the bus, I would say get them off the bus. Sorry, that's my old HR hat. Kick it in. I don't like to drag, this is my own philosophy, and it's truly, I'm not speaking on behalf of ICF now, I'm speaking on behalf of me, but you don't want to keep your organization at risk any longer than you need to. How many of you attended the law update yesterday, right? Good God, I didn't, but there's so many potential minefields out there for us, and if someone's not right for the organization, there's a way to do it that is respectful and protects that person's dignity. I strongly recommend outplacement in those cases, and EAP services, things that, I know there's an EAP service that's here today. It's some people I know, but it's really focusing on how do you help that person move on fast. Yes? Yes. Sometimes, for me personally, it's like if I'm going to invest that money, I'm going to invest that money in people that are going to stay in the organization. But that's how I work. I don't work with clients that are looking for me to do it as a last-ditch effort. That's not work I do. But there are other coaches that are happy to do that, and that's great. But it's not work that I personally do. Doesn't fit my strengths. My strengths are, lean differently, so. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. One of the things that could really work in that situation when you're trying to get a lot of people through is really group and cohort sessions, where you're doing a lot of group coaching around maybe a topic or an interest area or a specific kind of focus area that they may have. And I do a lot of group coaching. So that's an area that for organizations is really proving to be very cost effective and a way to bring that coaching culture in very, very quickly, because you're essentially training people, how to be coached, and in return then they know how to coach others. And it's really an effective approach. There's some really great articles out there. All you have to do is Google group coaching. There's some really great articles out there on the success and the value that that can bring. Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to add an additional on, you said return on expectations. We've implemented group coaching,
Okay.
and it was beyond expectations in building relationships they didn't expect.
That's me. It's my theme song. Sorry. Yes.
In building relationships they didn't expect that weren't necessarily
Yeah.
leadership situations, so it was a huge return on investment or expectation.
That's a great example. I mean, you start thinking it's going to be this one thing, but the funny thing about coaching is it can take you in so many different directions that you never perceived. So I'll end with this. My first experience of truly transformational coaching, I went to a coach for a new job. I was burned out on HR. I really needed a new job. I really needed to figure out how I could move into something else. And I came home with a 9-month-old baby boy from Russia. So I'm not quite sure how that happened. But, somehow in between, I ended up getting a new job, had a lot of fun running a P&L and all of that. But yeah, the coaching really resulted in a baby. So be careful when you go into those meetings. Be really careful what you think you want. So, any questions or anything else? Yes. Retention.
Stay with their jobs. But no, I mean, back
Yeah.
about, our parents and even my generation, like, you go to a job and you stay with the job forever now. Everyone.
Because while you have them, you want all of them. You want the best version of them. While you get to keep them, you want to make sure that you're getting the absolute greatest value out of them. That's why I would do it.
But why all of a sudden are we doing all this coaching? Why,
Coaching is a fairly new profession. Professional coaching really started about 20 years ago as a profession. And over the years, they've really refined it. We've established the credentials. We've established the competencies. We've put in place the code of ethics. So we've started to bring some rigor to it. Ultimately, Socrates was coaching. So coaching has been around forever. He asked really great probing questions, right? But as a profession, it's really only been recognized for about the last 20 years. And so you're starting to see the demonstrated evidence in organizations where people are going, coaching can't be just for the elite. It has to be something that raises the entire organization up. And I think that's what's really been driving it. A lot of focus on productivity, retention. How do you start to really capitalize on, while I've got this person, how do I get all of them? Yes.
I guess I would add too, or I'd ask you, is it also the sense that you're making that investment and treating them in a certain way as a coach, as opposed to a manager that might make them want to stay?
I got to tell you, one of the biggest reasons is retention. How do I keep them in the organization? The war on talent. My God, we've been talking about the war on talent for the entire time I've been in HR. We haven't solved the war on talent, right? And this is something that it's real. How do I retain them for as long as I can? I don't have dreams anymore of keeping people in organizations for 25 years. But if I can keep you for 5, 6 years, maybe I get you a year or two longer than I normally would have then.
I guess I'd add into that as well that our organization, we're smaller, maybe 35 setback. And we've had a higher success rate now with our hiring because they've now referred their friends who aren't happy at another place, and they've brought them in and said, you know what, I left, I came back, I'd rather have you here and enjoy this and work together. It's really just helped our whole culture.
That's an example of employment brand, really working for you. That's great. I hate to do this, but we are at our time limit. My song was giving me a little. So thank you.